welcome in our good friend. I saw him out on the quad on Saturday. We'll see him tonight on the TV side of things on News Channel 9. And, Mike, we kind of had the game pegged, right? We said we thought it was going to be a shootout. We thought it was going to be a one-possession game. We said if the O-line keeps Kyle McCord off his back, they've got a good chance to win. It all kind of played out like that. Well done.
Yeah, the only thing I think we didn't foresee was Syracuse getting down 21-0 and then basically dominating the game from that point forward. It was 42-17 from that stretch on. So, and that includes the fact that they took a touchdown off the board on a questionable illegal formation call. And then there was the drive that was extended that Syracuse looked like they had gotten a stop that they called defensive holding instead of pass interference because the ball was deflected. And, there was some question around that call. And Miami ends up scoring a touchdown on that. So despite the fact that there was kind of a 14-point swing with some questionable calls surrounding them, Syracuse still outscored Miami 42-17 over basically the last three quarters of the game, which is crazy to think about how much they dominated.
I'll keep this mostly about Syracuse, but I do want to ask you about Mario Cristobal's decision to kick that field goal with 3:42 to go. 4th and 10. I know 4th and 10, 4th and goal from the 10 is tough to convert, but, as we said at the top of the show, it wasn't like Miami had any success stopping Syracuse since the first quarter. Like, what made them think they were going to use their timeouts and get the ball back is beyond me. And it's not like a field goal cut it to 3. A field goal cut it to 4. They needed a touchdown either way. The more I think about it, I'm baffled with everything on the line that they kicked a field goal there. Were you surprised that they decided to go for 3 instead of the touchdown?
Absolutely stunned. Everything that we had talked about, leading up to the game was it felt like it could be one of those last team to have the ball wins it type of situations. And if you do go for it and score, while Syracuse's their whole approach to that last drive changes. They're not just trying to run the clock out. They're trying to get down and get into field goal range. And we know that there's been some special teams issues with Syracuse this year. Now you get into a situation where if Miami had tied the game, now there's a lot of pressure on that Syracuse offense because if you don't get into scoring range or if you just get a field goal, now Miami has a chance to pull off one of those late game wins that they've been, so famous for this season. And it boggled my mind because, yes, 4th and goal at the 10 is not the same as 4th and goal from the 3, right? It's a lot different as far as the percentage chance that you convert it, different play calls, et cetera. But Miami's coaching staff has said all season how much they trust Cam Ward and they put the ball in his hands and believe that he's going to pull them out of any situation. And then they get into that situation they were in late in the game, down by 7, and they took the ball out of his hands. It didn't make sense to me from that standpoint. It didn't make sense to me based on how their defense had been playing. So I was completely shocked, and as soon as that happened, I was watching the game with my son. I turned to my son and I said, I don't know that Miami's going to get the ball back now. I think they just lost the game by going for a field goal. And that's exactly what ended up happening. It was baffling to me. I think it was an extremely poor coaching decision. I think Fran Brown coached circles around Mario Cristobal on Saturday.
Yeah, and if they don't make it there, and I said this earlier, now you've got Syracuse pinned back at the 10, and your play calling is probably a little bit different, maybe a little more conservative if you're, that close to the goal line. And I don't know. I thought it was odd, right? Because again, the odds aren't great that you're going to score on a 4th and goal from the 10, but I have to think those odds are better than getting a stop after you haven't stopped the team since the first quarter and getting the ball back in a short period of time and then going down and scoring another touchdown. I just didn't see it happening. We had this conversation. We've had this conversation a few times over the course of the season, but now that the regular season is over, Paulie brought this up earlier about the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks. Is it an open and shut case in your mind? Is McCord on the list now based on, the win and going over 4,000 yards and just the way that he closed out the year, or is it still open for debate?
I think it's still open for debate just because he only has the one season and he doesn't have multiple years to point to. But I don't think anyone would call anyone dumb for putting him on the list. Whereas I think prior to this win, even though we had the records and whatever, if they had finished 8-4, I still think there's some people that might have said, I don't think you can put him on for just 1 year. But now you have a 9-win regular season. You lead the nation in passing, and you beat a top 10 team as a signature win to close out the regular season. I think all of those things combined and what it meant to Fran Brown in year one and where the program had been, you take all of that into consideration, the national attention it got Syracuse football this season. Yeah, I don't think there's anyone that would bat an eye at Fran Brown or at Kyle McCord being on anyone's Mount Rushmore of Syracuse quarterbacks.
All right, what does this mean, this win mean big picture, Mike, in your mind?
To me, it validates the entire season, and not to say that finishing 8-4 would have invalidated it, but you would have had the narrative of, well, who did you really beat? Yeah, okay, you won that one game at UNLV, but your other big wins, the ranked Georgia Tech win, they finished 7-5. Your other wins against ranked opponents, other games against ranked opponents didn't really end up meaning much. Pitt kind of faltered even though you got blown out by them. So, you lost to a Stanford that was the only team on your schedule that finished with a losing record, and you lost to them. So there still would have been some people, I think, poking holes in the resume of Syracuse if they had finished 8-4. You can't do that now because all of that taken into account, Syracuse's 3 losses, 2 of them are bowl teams and we're on the road. Yes, the Stanford loss was an aberration, but you beat a ranked UNLV team on the road who is a win away from getting to the playoff. You beat Miami, who is a top 10 team and had everything to play for and still has a shot at making the playoff. So everything that Syracuse has done this season, it just kind of takes it to another level. And the fact that finally you had one of these nationally televised games against a name opponent, a brand opponent, a ranked opponent, and everyone was watching. And Syracuse performed well, pulled out the win, made a statement. I think that helps as well. And so now Syracuse can go into the transfer portal, onto the recruiting trail and say, look, everything that I'm telling you, the DART culture, et cetera, that's all. We have tangible evidence behind that now. And I think it just brings everything to a head. It validates everything that they've accomplished prior to this. And, I just think makes everything feel that much bigger than just an 8-4 season would have.
You talk about going into the portal. We know Kyle McCord will not be back. The quarterback position is going to be a hot button topic right around this program. Can they get the next Kyle McCord? Recruiting is your area of expertise. Can you give us an idea? You don't necessarily have to give us names, but can you give us an idea of what is realistic in the portal versus what they have on the roster versus what they have coming in? Who do you think is the next quarterback, for Syracuse football? Is it someone out of the portal, or is it someone, that we know of that's already either committed to Syracuse or already here?
I think it's someone who's not on the roster right now, if I had to guess. But I know that the coaching staff really likes Jakari Williams, and I know that they're very high on the guys that they've got coming in this recruiting class. It's just really tough to hand over a program to a true freshman, and so I think you'd like someone with more experience. But, Michael Johnson Jr., who was the backup all season, he's coming back. So could you turn to him for a year and have him sort of be the bridge before you're willing to turn it over to a Jakari Williams or one of your incoming guys? That's a possibility. But listen, I think Syracuse is going to explore quarterbacks in the transfer portal, and I think they're going to go and try and get the best possible player that they can. But I don't think they're also going to guarantee a starting spot to anyone. I think they're going to say, come in, compete. You'll have an opportunity to win the job. But, we got some guys here that are talented, and, you're going to have to beat them out. Just knowing Fran Brown, I think that would kind of be the way he would approach it. But it's a very attractive spot because of what Kyle McCord has done. So I do think, like there was a report today that Miller Moss is going to enter the portal once it becomes open. Same thing with Ricky Collins from LSU. That he was a former really highly touted top 200, top 300 type recruit, 4-star. Miller Moss has had some good moments at USC. I could see Syracuse kind of kicking the tires around those guys and other guys that come in the portal and just kind of trying to see who they think is going to be the best fit.
One quick thing, I see the point being made in the chat that Syracuse was stopped at the end of the second quarter. I keep saying Miami didn't stop them since the first quarter. I don't really hold that against Syracuse. They got the ball back at the 15 with less than 2 minutes to go. They're just trying to get to halftime at that point. In my opinion, it was just kind of like run some clock and punt and get in the locker room knowing that you got the ball to start the second half. So just wanted to address that. We talk about the bowl game coming up, Mike, and whether or not some of the high-profile seniors will play, like a Marlo Wax, like a Kyle McCord. Do you think the destination and the opponent and, the marquee nature of whatever game they go to, does that matter? Or do you think, Kyle McCord's sitting either way?
I think it does matter. Now, I'll say this. I think Kyle McCord will want to play in the bowl game regardless of what the opponent is, where the bowl is, etc. I think he will want to because he's said that, right? He hasn't played in one. He wants to. It's an experience he'd like to have. But I also think, when you start talking agents and family and friends and etc., being realistic about it, Syracuse playing Minnesota in the Tax Slayer Bowl or the Pinstripe Bowl doesn't move the needle as far as his pro prospects. Syracuse playing Colorado or a Missouri in the Gator Bowl or the Holiday Bowl or, something like that, the Pop-Tart Bowl. Those type of opponents in that type of a bowl game would potentially have an impact on his pro prospects. And so in a situation like that, I could see Kyle McCord looking at that as a potential opportunity to further his draft stock, as sort of doing Fran Brown a favor of, hey, look, you brought me here. This was extremely beneficial to both of us. Let's cap this off the right way by going down, together, as opposed to him bowing out and handing the reins over to Michael Johnson Jr. Then it's a completely different type of a team. And who knows how many others would also decide that they weren't going to play, whereas if Kyle McCord does, I think almost everyone would follow suit. So, yeah, I think all of that matters in his decision-making process for sure.
All right, Mike, we got to run. We're out of time in this segment, but we've got you on the TV side of things tonight. We look forward to it, 7:30 tonight here on News Channel 9.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.